Hey, Mr. Lion, I have a question.
What is it, Mr. Goose?
So, my dad recently came back from the war, and he's been acting a little strange lately. He's been pretty sad and hasn't been wanting to play with me a lot. It's been pretty rough. Do you know why?
Sounds like your dad might be suffering from PTSD.
Oh, really? What does that stand for?
PTSD stands for post-traumatic stress disorder. It can develop in anyone who experiences a traumatic event.
Oh, that might explain his weird mood swings and him not wanting to play with me a lot. Makes sense.
War can be a stressful and traumatic event that may affect people in different ways. Luckily today there is more understanding regarding PTSD. PTSD is a serious issue and should not be taken lightly.
Mom, guess what?
What, sweetie?
I was talking to Mr. Lion, and he was telling me about PTSD, and that's something that Dad has.
Your father does have PTSD.
But I had a few more questions about it, like, what are the effects of PTSD on the brain?
Sweetie, I really wish I knew those answers, but I'm afraid I do not. You could ask the psychologist, Dr. Seal, to help you out. I'm sure he'll be willing to help you.
Oh, good idea! Thanks, let's go! Hey, Mr. Seal!
Oh, hello, Miss Elephant and Mr. Goose.
How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. How may I help you?
I had a few questions about PTSD. My dad is actually suffering from it, and I wanted to know more about it.
PTSD is a psychiatric disorder. Do you know what PTSD stands for?
Oh, no! What does it stand for?
PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder. PTSD primarily affects the amygdala, the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, and the hippocampus. The amygdala is most affected because this portion of the brain processes emotions, specifically those of fear. PTSD is a serious neurological condition. There are several treatments for PTSD, several which include coping. You can cope with PTSD by practicing healthy strategies such as distracting yourself, getting lots of exercise, or talking to others. It may be beneficial to reach out to a therapist or to a trusted friend to help you with this.
Is it just soldiers that get it?
No, not only soldiers can get PTSD. Anyone who has experienced or witnessed a traumatic event may undergo PTSD, regardless of age, race, or gender. In fact, about 7% of people will suffer from some form of PTSD within their lifetime, according to the National Center for PTSD. PTSD is often associated with soldiers within recent years. About 30% of Vietnam veterans and about 11 to 20% of Iraqi war veterans were estimated to have suffered from some form of PTSD following their service in the war. I wish I could help you know more about the way that PTSD has been perceived with soldiers. Maybe the historian Mr. Giraffe can help you understand PTSD within the context of war and how it has been treated.
Oh, great idea, Mr. Seal. We're gonna go talk to the historian Mr. Giraffe, and he's gonna give us great advice. Okay, Goose?
Okay.
Thank you. Bye. Let's go. Hey, Mr. Giraffe.
Oh, hello.
I have a few questions about PTSD. So, how has PTSD affected soldiers in specific wars like World War II, Vietnam, and Afghanistan and Iraq?
Well, you see, the way that we have viewed PTSD has changed over time. In the Civil War, PTSD was referred to as soldier's heart and was seen as a characteristic of weakness rather than a condition. In World War II, it was referred to as shell shock. At this point, it had been recognized as a neurological condition, but the way that it was treated was very unfair and included shock treatments. The perception of PTSD as another common side effect of war shifted around World War II when it was referred to as war neurosis. This introduced PTSD as being perceived as a mental disorder and a neurological effect, rather than another toll of war. Understanding of PTSD has increased over the years, and it was referred to as combat stress reaction in the Vietnam War. Following the war, veterans bonded over their shared issues brought by PTSD, including failure to easily adjust to their home life due to the PTSD they had suffered. In 1980, the term PTSD was officially named. By the time of the Afghanistan and Iraq wars in the 2000s, PTSD was better understood and acknowledged by society as another effect of war.
Is there any other factors that might affect how you get PTSD?
Lower ranked military personnel, young soldiers, and those wounded in action are among at the highest risk for developing PTSD following war. In fact, young soldiers are 7 times as likely to develop PTSD.
Oh, okay. Well, I think I have a great understanding now over PTSD, and we can work with Dad on making his life a lot better. Good idea. Thank you, Mr. Giraffe. Bye.
Glad I could help. Hope it all works out.
Thanks. Dad, I'm so sorry that I didn't treat you better, and I should have understood what you're going through, and I've talked to people now, and now I have a better sense of what PTSD is. I understand why you didn't want to play with me the other day.
It's okay.
Mr. Goose, I am glad you became informed about PTSD, which I suffer from, rather than attributing my behavior to crankiness or weakness. I appreciated that you didn't just jump to conclusions. You see, the best thing we can do to improve our society's perception of PTSD is to be informed on what the disorder is, the effects that it may place on those suffering from it, and proper ways to deal with it. We can defeat the stigma surrounding PTSD by staying properly educated and informed.